Thank you very much, and hello again. I'd like to start off by just giving you a little bit of background. The British Council, as has been mentioned, has been running a TNE development project with OHEC for the last 2 years. And over that period, we've had significant debates and discussion with partners around. We have run partner finding workshops, we've run peer review discussions, we've run workshops on sustainability and quality assurance, strategy and business planning, and they've all really led to some common issues which have emerged in TNE development between the UK and Thailand. So the panel today will be discussing some of these common issues which are listed in your programme. So first of all, I'd like to introduce you to the panel. We have 4 panel members, 2 here from Thailand, 2 from the UK. Dr. Sarawat from the NIDA, the Logistics Management Graduate School of Applied Statistics at the National Institute of Development Administration. Hello. We have Professor Stephen Edwards. Professor Stephen Edwards, Principal Fellow of the Higher Education Academy at the University of Liverpool. You've already. And we have John Pike, Director Internationalisation at Westminster Business School, University of Westminster. And Professor Thera from the Faculty of Engineering at Thammasat University, who is... Yes. Yeah, sorry, thank you. I'm so sorry I did that. Okay, so I'd like to start with a general question to our panelists around TNE development. Could you all give us just a very brief opening statement, really, on how you found the process of developing a joint or double degree programme, and what are some of the key challenges? Maybe I'll start with Steve, if that's okay.
Okay, thanks. So you've gone off track immediately then. Well, the challenges in setting up a new partnership for TNE are several-fold. So, firstly, there's a process of due diligence that we need to think about from both universities, where many of the questions that were raised in the talk before the break are raised in terms of what's the reputation of the university we're working with, what facilities do they have. Can they deliver an education programme of the standards that we would say was acceptable in the UK? What are the health and safety issues? What are the physical resources like? What are the staffing resources like, etc.? And that process of due diligence is extensive, because clearly what all universities need to take account of is what are the risks involved here? What are the reputational risks? What are the financial risks? And what are the risks to our students in terms of not getting the education that we can promise them? There's that side of it. So there's a whole series of procedures and questions that are asked about the reputation, the viability of the partner university, and that can take a considerable amount of time. Then in terms of making a case for developing a TNE, we need to consider the advantages, the benefits, the need, and importantly, to ensure that whatever program that we're developing, that is a real market demand for that particular program. It's no point developing a program if we're not going to attract any students to it. So there's some of the more general considerations to think about beforehand. What is the real need for the program? What are the benefits, and what are the risks that from both sides need to be addressed in order then to ensure whether the program will go ahead or not? And then associated with that are a whole series of other questions that we may be talking about more specifically later, which are English language, the budgets, the finances, etc., etc. So in general terms, before we talk about the individual processes, there's a procedure to determine whether there's a good fit between the two universities in terms of their ambitions, what they want to achieve, and whether the university partner can deliver to the same standards that we would say fits and maps to the QA standards of the UK.
Thank you, Steve. John, would you like to?
I think what Stephen says is spot on. I think there's a stage actually before that, which is finding the right people to talk to within the potential partner institution. And in my experience, that normally involves some local input, somebody who has local contacts with the institution that identified as one that you might like to partner with. And in that context, I think can't speak too highly really of the initiatives that have been taken by British Council and by OHEC in driving forward the double degree programme, particularly over the last, 2.5 years, which has brought universities together who may or may not work together in the end, but certainly has engendered a much closer relationship and the opportunity to develop an understanding of the sort of things that Stephen trailed at the end of what he was saying, in terms of finding curriculum that are complementary, in terms of finding credit transfer systems that will work, in terms of trying to identify the market demand levels that may exist. And all of that needs to fit within an overall university strategy, which may differ between the two potential partners. And I think there are some things that need to be talked about at a fairly early stage of a relationship that one might normally leave till a bit later, because it can save really a loss of resource if the partnership isn't going to develop in the way that you'd originally intended.
Thank you. Dr. Sarawat, your views from Thailand.
Thank you, Kelvin. Good morning, everyone. So my name is Sarawat. So that time, let's go back like 1 year previously, we have one TNE program. This is the first time that I know about TNE. Actually, it's not me myself who know the program. The vice president come to me and talk to me like, why not you apply for this program? And in that time, to be frank with you, I said like, what is this program and why I need to? Because in that time, we're still good. Our program in logistic management, we still have some students, but of course, the trend of the number of students is, as you may know, is declining in Thailand. And last year, we also had the scheme called New S-Curves, and logistics is the one of the New S-Curve. And let's think about that in that time. I think that is very worth working on the program because we can, the logistics is related to the multinational companies, industries, and also we need to work internationally. In that time, this is one of the very challenge to have a program, such a program that can collaborate with the university abroad, especially in the UK. And you know that UK has very specialists. You have the expertise in this field, in logistic field, and also in industry. That is a starting point for us. But of course, after that, we need to think about that. There's a lot of things to prepare. Like, say, for example, I think Stephen and Professor John also talk about that, how we work on the credits, how we work on the program and tuition fee, and the language barrier. I think that is one of the big challenge. And this is the first thing that we need to think about. And we need to gather all the resources that we have. And I like the word that Dr. Nitin talked in the morning, that we talk about the mission and vision of the leadership of the administrator to look forward in the future, what of the program that we be like in the future and what we want, and need to pursue and need to keep persistent and consistent to work on that. That is very important.
And Dr. Theory, your opening comments.
Okay, thank you. Actually, all the problems, all the challenge we have faced here, exactly all the speaker mentions. In the Faculty of Engineering, Thammasat University, we have passed kind of TNE program. It's about 20 years. We did start a twinning program. It's 2+2. With all departments we have 5 departments. Something really challenging for us, we start all 5 departments in the same time. We spend 2 years to match the curriculums, like what you said exactly, how to keep the standards. So at the end, we found that for the Thai students, academic standards in engineering we don't have such much problem for this. But the problem is the language. So we have to break through this kind of the ability of the students. But actually, like I say, we have faced kind of problem in the first couple years for the language, and then we have some methods to improve the students. And I could say for the number of students who apply for the program, for each year we have like 150 students who apply for training program. But in first 2 years we filter out the student, because before we send a student to Nottingham. So finally, this year we sent like almost 50 students to Nottingham. So, but all departments.
Thank you. There's some really good introductions and sort of setting out some of the key challenges already. Now we're going to get into some of the detail on some of these specific issues as listed in the programme, but I'd like to make sure that this is an open debate. So please do put your questions onto the online system, and we'll pause every so often just to see what questions have come through, and we can put your questions then directly to the panel here. So I'd like to get into some of the detail and maybe start by talking about credit transfer. And how you tackle that issue, how you work with your partners on agreeing the credits that are needed, what some of the issues are around credit transfer. Who would like to start on that? Would you like to?
Yeah,
Okay.
I can.
Okay, John.
I can do that because I bear the scars. As I'm sure many of you know, very standard practice in the UK that we can give up to 50% of credit at master's level. Westminster, we have something called recorded prior learning. So we can go up to master's credits at 180 in total. We can go up to 90, where we can allow students, as long as they've met the required standards, we can take account of those, and they can come to us for the second semester. Now, there is some variation in the number of credits per module. We call them module, you call them courses, some people call them subjects. But in our language, in terms of modules, 20 credits is fairly common at master's level. So that would mean that you could get a maximum, say, of 80 credits, which would mean that your students would need to come to the UK university to take 100 credits. And that could be 5 modules, or it could be 3. It depends on the number of credits that are awarded to the dissertation. Sometimes they're 60, sometimes they're 40, sometimes they're 30, sometimes they're 20. So you can immediately see that there is some complexity involved, and you need to look carefully with your partner at how the structure of their credits is at master's level in order to determine what is the potential in terms of having coming to an arrangement over a double degree. At undergraduate level, we normally give about 240 out of 360, which is 2 years out of 3, so that students can come for the final year of our 3 years. There are then some arrangements whereby you can come for the final year of the bachelor's program and stay on and do the master's, maybe at some with some financial inducement or arrangement to cover that. And it also a means of the students getting familiar with the UK system, improving their English, and generally becoming capable of achieving much higher awards than maybe if they came for just the masters. So again, the structure of the credit system is very important to look at, and there are some that work better than others.
You wanted to?
I could share in the level of the bachelor level. So what we did in Somerset University in the Faculty of Engineering, we have to understand first 2 years in Somerset, later 2 years in University of Nottingham. At the end, the student got 2 degrees, one from Somerset, the other one from the University of Nottingham. So the difference is the credits. In Somerset, 3 hours for the lecture, we counted for 3 credits. But in Nottingham, it's 10 credits. And we are talking about the honor degree for the Bachelor of Engineering. So in University of Nottingham, when the student get in, they have the A level, and then they spend 3 years in the Nottingham. But our students, so they have to spend first 2 year in Thammasat University. It's, I mean, my student, when they go to the Nottingham, they enter for the second year. So what does it mean? First 2 year in Thammasat, 80 credits at Thammasat. It's equivalent to 120 credits in the Nottingham. In the honor degree for the Bachelor Engineering, the Nottingham need 360 credits. So that means the student need to take 240 credits in 2 years in the Nottingham. But it's the difficulty is you have to match. We spend like 2 years to match the curriculums and then to match the credits. And at the end.
Long process, yeah. Steve, would you like to?
For undergraduate programs, credit transfer is less of a problem than it is at postgraduate level. And the reason for that is most of our undergraduate dual awards are 2+2s, where a student will spend 2 years in their home university, then 2 years in Liverpool. And the degree classification that the students obtain then is based on their 2 years at Liverpool. And so we don't have to transfer any credits if a student comes into our second year. But of course, if a student stays at their home institution for the entire period, which they can do in some of our dual awards, then we need to look at the credits and we need to do an equivalence. And we need to do a mapping, basically, of the process. And the thing to bear in mind is that the credit systems will be different in different countries, as you've mentioned. Sometimes they're different in different universities, slightly. So I think the key things really are flexibility. You have to have a can-do attitude to make it work. And bear in mind that for a UK degree, and I guess for here, students need a minimum of a certain number of credits to get their award. And sometimes in dual awards, a student has to take more credits than they actually need in order then to satisfy the requirements. At postgraduate level, it's a little more difficult in some cases, but again, I think you have to have a can-do attitude and think, well, what has the student done in another university? Can we be sure at the end of the program that the student has met the learning outcomes? And I think that is the key thing to think about. It's not so much what they've done and the detail of what they've done, it's have they met the learning outcomes of the program by the time the award is made. So the mapping of the individual modules to the overall program objectives is the key thing, and it may be the students take different routes to get there in the end, but we have to be able then to justify to our external examiners that the students have met the learning outcomes of the program, irrespective of what route they've taken in to get their final qualifications.
Thank you.
Thank you. Actually, I would like to add more about the credit mapping and credit transfer for the program. Actually, I'm doing the 1+1 in logistics in 1 year in NIDA and 1 year in Hull, okay, UK. The thing is, like, we have talked about the credit, and the problem is, like, the credit system in the UK, as you know, that is different. And one credit in UK is equal to 10 hours, but it's not all lecturing. But it includes the other things like self-studying and those kind of things, right? So in that case, it's pretty difficult and to do it using like the US credit directly. This is the different way. We have to do is like Stephen said, we need to map it. We need to be flexible enough. We need to lay out your courses, and of course, in the courses, you need to map with the courses there in the UK. But it's not exactly one-to-one. You need to be more flexible in terms of the best way is like using the ELO, expected learning outcome. Some of the university using PLO is a program learning outcome. So ask them what is the course PLO, the program PLO, or you need to have your own ELO as well. The one that's here, so you may know like in Thailand, OHEC, we also have 5 ELO, right? But of course, in the UK, they have that one. Try to map that together. So it's not mean like one course here. We map only one course there, but maybe one course there, maybe map more than one course here. It can be 2 or 3. So you need to mapping it. Okay. In that case, we can see that, and UK system used like that. And then when we have that, you need to communicate back to your administrator as well, how to map it and then how to work on this credit transfer.
Thank you. That's some interesting examples. I think the key thing is flexibility, and there are different models here, and I think it's about understanding the two universities and how that works. And for me that key message of flexibility, and also putting in the time to map the courses is important. Okay, so we'll move on because there's 5 things I'd like to discuss. We might not get time to do all of them. I think the next 2 are key. One around tuition fees and scholarships. And this comes up quite a lot in the discussions that we've had. That it is more expensive to study in the UK. How do institutions overcome that barrier for students who maybe find that tuition fees difficult for the UK study part of the programme? Maybe would you like to start with that?
Okay. Actually, I could say that the tuition fee in Thammasat University and the University of Nottingham could be 10 times difference. And the tuition fee in the UK university, they update it every year, I could say. And what we try to do with the students and with the university, since we have very good collaboration with the University of Nottingham, like I say, almost 20 years. So at the end, all students who could go to University of Nottingham, they have got the partial scholarship, 25% discount for the tuition fee. And if they are the top 4 students, they got 15% more plus to 25. So still, it's still much of money. But those students who try to go to the 2+2 program, actually, I could say that they have very good support from the family. So that's a key point.
Thank you. And that scholarship, does that come from your university, from Nottingham?
No, it's the kindness from the University of Nottingham, actually.
Okay. Thank you. And Steve, you mentioned that some of your students have free tuition. Could you talk a bit more about that, Raimpi?
Yeah, the way in which we set up our partnership with Chula in 2010 was on the basis that we knew students from Liverpool would be coming to Chula. And the developments with Chula coincided with our development of an integrated master's program, which gave us flexibility in terms of how we could teach students in their final year. So these were students who'd done 3 years on a bachelor's program, so they feel like they had the kind of standard university education for 3 years. The final year, then, we wanted to give them added value and something new and something different from what they had in their first 3 years. And so we knew at the very early onset that students from Liverpool would want to come to Chula, either for 6 weeks or for 1 year or etc. And it was very obvious that this was going to be an important and attractive selling point for our program, to allow students to then to come here and take part in the research, but working on their degree. And the key thing really is that while the students are here, they're working on a Liverpool module, which is assessed by Liverpool, so it counts. So we were able then, so I was able to negotiate with our administrators then and convince them that we'd get as much benefit from our students going out in terms of the credits that were being transferred out but not being charged for by Chula, that would be balanced by an equivalence of students coming to Liverpool from Chula on the dual award program. So they were set up in parallel with each other. And so there's no tuition fee for students from Chula when they're in Liverpool. But of course, they do have to find their living costs. And not only are the tuition fees 10 times, the living costs are, I would guess, 4 times, perhaps 5 times as much. So even coming to Liverpool, to live in Liverpool for 6 months or a year is expensive. Much cheaper, I might add, than London, which is very expensive. I'm sorry I had to say that. But you know,
you not only have competition.
No, but it's an important factor. So even with a tuition fee exemption, there is still a cost. And for Chula, the students will get a scholarship from Chula from various sources, or they may get, if they're a PhD student, they may get a Golden Jubilee Award to come. But again, it's still a factor. Setting up that arrangement again to offer a tuition fee exemption based on a student exchange is tough. And it's based on evidence that Liverpool would get as much benefit from the outgoing students as it would from the incoming students. So it's a special arrangement and not a model we can apply universally across all aspects of our TNE.
Interesting one. John, costs in London.
It's a wonderful city. Talking to and with finance directors about discounts on fees for students from partner institutions is one of the great joys of life. Finance directors like to think in terms of having students who pay full fees, and they can't really understand why you would want to give money away. I've been accused on more than one occasion of giving the university's money away. My argument is that would you rather have 100% minus X rather than naught? It's made me particularly unpopular in certain circles. But for me, what is the point of having a partner unless you have some special arrangements and special relationship? And that goes back to something that's been mentioned by, I think, just about everybody so far. It depends upon the vision and strategy of your institution, and that comes from the top. And if they don't see it as worthwhile doing, then I think you're heading for trouble. One of the other things that's comes about by talking to people from Thai universities is the amazement or levels of incredulity at the fee levels in the UK, and the differential between here and there, and the fact that our fees go up every year, so the gap gets ever wider. And bridging that gap is becoming an even bigger issue than it was 5 or so years ago. Our fees for international students are unregulated in the UK, and universities are in a increasing pressure financially to show returns, and the international student market is regarded as a way to almost subsidise domestic provision, I'm afraid. And I can't see that situation changing in the near future, which is not a great note to end on, but I think that's the reality of the situation.
Thanks, John.
For my case, last 2 weeks, we have our program has been approved by our council. So this is the authorized, give us an authorization to advertise. And you can, when we put it in the Facebook, there's an inbox question, what is the first question, right? Do you have any financial aids? Do you have scholarships? So this is the first question, and it's keep coming, okay? So about the Asian, this is one of the first thing that we need to talk about, and with the partnership, because like Dr. Tura said, that we have to talk with the partnership clearly about the tuition and how we can make a discount in terms of the numbers that we can give to them. And very lucky, our partner, HOW, they already have a partner from many countries around the world, so they already have a scheme. And Lynn is the person that I'm talking with. She kind of know that what kind of things that I need to talk with her. So she said, okay, we know that you need to talk with the financial things. So we give this number for you if you can provide this number. And also they also have a scholarship scheme as well. So we have a lot of different incentives in that case to work on that. When we have a discount, we combine it because it's 1+1. We need to collect our tuition as well, but it's not that high. When we combine together, it's go back to the original price that the student can go to the UK only 1 degree, but now we can have 2 degrees with the same price. So this is the thing that we try to advertise, and also you can have extra tutoring from Thai side. Our faculty will be willing to help you to prepare before you leave the country. So this is the thing that we try to put together.
Thank you. And your partner is Hull, yes? I understand that in a recent survey, if I remember rightly, Hull was the cheapest place to live in the UK. So
Yeah, this is the other one add on top, different from the London.
But if anyone from Hull is here, but that was okay. I think I'm afraid we're running out of time. Actually, we've got quite a lot to cover. So I just wonder. I think probably the most important topic to discuss is English proficiency. Actually, as a final topic here, we probably won't get onto the others, I'm afraid. But so English proficiency as a barrier. You know, what do you need to do? What are the requirements on the Thai side in terms of students coming into the program? How do they develop their English skills? Just general comments on that, but we've only got a few minutes, so just 30 seconds each, if that's okay. Sorry.
Okay, good. With our partner university in China, which was set up about 10 years ago, we realized this was going to be an issue. And with large numbers of students needing to get qualifications in English to come and study in the UK. And the qualifications that are set they're set by the universities, of course, but they're also set by the UK government to allow the students to get visas to come into the country. So it's not just the universities setting barriers. We're partly governed by what the governments and border agencies require in terms of standards of English. But what we did in China was that English is part of the curriculum. Okay, so not only is English taught at undergraduate level from day one, it is part of the curriculum. The students must pass modules in English, and if they don't pass the modules in English, they're not eligible then for the dual award. They're just eligible for the single award. And my experience with English language teaching or training here is that it's up to the students to find that outside of their coursework. And I think you might need to think about that and think, should we have English as part of the curriculum? If your university staff cannot teach that English, why not outsource that English? There are many, many very, very good English language agencies around. Utilize those. They have the expertise. They have the flexibility. But I would strongly suggest you have English as part of the curriculum.
Thanks, Steve. I've just been told we've got an extra sort of 5 to 6 minutes, so
all right.
not such. Sorry.
Maybe you've had your chance now. What Stephen says is absolutely right. There is a tendency for students to cram to get their IELTS or other qualification and then relax. I've done it. I've now got in. I can go. For me, getting an IELTS is the starting point. And I long believe that there is a hole in the market that students, rather than just focusing on IELTS, should also be taking subject-specific courses to learn about England, learn about English, which, particularly if they're coming in a master's program, because it's a one-year program. I'd love to think that such programs could come about. I'm not sure that there is a level of demand, because I'm not sure that there is a level of communication about the need to have that additional knowledge about English culture and what to expect when they arrive.
Yeah, actually we have to set the minimum. Okay, so we cannot set very low because they need to go to Hull and they need to go to UK. They need to work on the study in English, speak in English, listening in English. So we need to set the certain minimum. For our program, we set as a 5 first. But actually, if you want to go to Hull, you need to pass at minimum 5.5. Even 5.5, you need to go to have a pre-station in that case. 10 weeks before school begins. So if you have more than that, 5, you can go right away. So why we need to set a little bit lower, but not too low, because we need to attract students first, and then in the first semester that they are here with us, they can have a time to learn or to practice, because we also can use our resource in the university. We have a language school, we have a communication school, so we have a professor who very keen in English, so we can use also the resource that we have as well. So in that case, you need to trade off between the minimum and the quality as well. In that case, to attract more students in the first hand, because we know that the nature of the Thai student that they are very good in other things, but when they go to the language things, they have a problem. So you need to think about, and what is the way to help them as well. Like say, for example, British Council is one of the source that can outreach to the university that maybe the partnership university that we have. In that case, we can send all the students here. They can learn the IELTS before send them to the UK. This is one of the good way as well.
You know, English with the engineering, it's not easy because they spend a lot of time to learn engineering, and then they need to have a good English too. So when we start the program, they have set very high for the IELTS, and after 10 years with the trial and error, what we have. So at the end, the minimum IELTS for the student who go to the Nottingham will be 6.0, and none of the element below 5.5. And you know, we did push a lot for the students, try to convince them to study. We have 100% of the English course during first 2 years. And frankly speaking, our student is very good support for the IELTS test because some of students take 10 times for the test. So thank you.
10 times, wow. So we have we have a few questions from the audience. Maybe we'll bring a couple in now before we close. Yes.
Well, there are quite a few questions about the English language proficiency as well, which has been answered. One interesting question would be, the person is interested in what John said about that we need to find the right people to talk to in order to build a partnership. Who will be the most potential people in the university to talk to?
I think you've heard of the chicken and the egg. This is a classic example of it, I think. I think most universities have an international department or section. A growing number have vice president or deputy vice chancellor specialising in global engagement. And I think you need to identify who that person is and then make an approach. If you know somebody in the country, either somebody in the UK who might have access to them, and vice versa for a UK university, knowing somebody here who might have access, then it makes it that much easier. As it happens, I'll give you an example. One of my cases, and I won't mention the university here, but one of my ex-students was the cousin of a vice president in this particular university here. So I asked the student if they could make an approach and see if they could get a meeting for me. So I think you have to be, you have to do a little bit of detective work, and you have to be brave, and you have to be prepared for rejection, maybe at the first stage. And I think, as Sarah mentioned earlier, transnational education is not for the faint-hearted. It's for those who are persistent and tenacious. And if you don't have those skills, I think you need to learn them and acquire them pretty quickly.
Any more questions? Yes.
Well, there is one question about the credit transfer system. How do your universities deal with the double counting of credits issues in your T&E?
Who'd like to tackle that one? You want to?
Yes. It's a matter of, this is an issue raised by our Quality and Standards Office. They're very concerned about the issue of double counting, and it particularly applies at the level of the dissertation. And there are various ways to try and get around it. Sometimes it's dual supervision, sometimes it may be a matter of having to provide separate dissertations to separate institutions. I think it's a matter of negotiation between the respective quality and standards offices to try and find a solution to it. And I think between us we've probably got a few examples, but don't have time to go into them now. But it's an issue you can't hide away from, you can't run away from it. You have to face it up fair and square, because quality and standards will catch you out otherwise.
Yeah, just to add really to what John said, it is an issue. There are some people in the UK think this is not the way forward. Why should you give 2 degrees for the same piece of work? At postgraduate level, it's key, as John says, to have dual supervision, dual monitoring. So even when the student is working in the partner country, there must be input from the host institution, again, to make sure the quality standards are maintained. And with our dual awards and joint awards, it's a single thesis, but dual participation of the thesis defense, even if that's via teleconferencing. So I think it is an issue, but I think the key thing really is dual monitoring, parallel monitoring of the student as many times as possible throughout the program is essential to ensure that the quality standards are maintained.
My case, I just want to add, for the independent studies, or the thesis that we're going to have, that the student may ask also, why I need to do 2 theses? I need to work double, those kind of things. So we also think about that, and we, like Stephen said, we talk about co-advice, co-monitoring. But of course, the QAA is not happy, duplicate the whole thesis, the whole IS here. Okay, so in that case, we need to modify that in such a way, my case, is we can use some Thai case study, put it in on top of the thing that they work from the UK. In that case, we can complete that, because we can mention this is the one different. We put another case, case of Thailand. But in overall, we've been supervised together. Somehow we can work together between the 2 professors set up the university. So this is the way.
But for the undergrad level, do not have any problem with that, because of we have some small senior projects, and then we could transfer very easy. But I would like to support something. Whom would you have to talk to if you would like to create a program? Actually, you need to do some homework first. You have to try to match the curriculums. You have to convince the vice chancellor, whatever, rector, president. You could do that. I mean, if you need it to happen, if you talk to the top down, no, it's not easy. But you have to, you prove yourself. I mean, your faculty, your departments, you could make it, you match curriculums already. So talk to the upper level, that's it.
So we have one last question, just quick answers on this one.
All right. Would you please kindly elaborate the advantages of the T&E with BC, British Council, in comparison to the conventional bilateral collaboration?
I start first. So TNA, because you say, at the end, student got 2 degrees at 2 university. And the option for my student is they could go for Master of Science in 1 year to get the master. And then with very good connection, they have, again, a discount or something special option for my students. And I could say that my student who graduated from University of Nottingham, 80% of them, they just spend the Master of Science, not just in Nottingham, I mean in UK, and very successful.
I'll just say on the British Council programme, I mean, the aim of it is to help start and develop these partnerships. I mean, it's up to the university to take it forward, to commit the resources. So for me, that's what it's all about. Steve, did you want to say?
Yeah. And also from our point of view, I think if we are part of a project that is funded and supported by the British Council, this is evidence that we need to provide, people like me need to provide to our administrators, that it is part of something bigger than a bilateral. And if you like, the British Council's badge of approval in recommending partners to us is important. So the reputational benefits of having the British Council involved, I think, is important because of the standing and the status they have and reputation that they have for programs of this nature. So I think reputation is very important.
Thank you. Okay, I think that's probably the end. We have run over, so I'd just like to thank you all very much as panellists. It was a really interesting debate. I think we could have gone on for another half an hour, but thank you very much for your contributions, and thank you for your questions. Thank you all. Thank you.